Welcome, everyone. We'll give people just a minute to get started and enter the room. All right, well, let's get started. I think enough people are joining, and we'll just collect more as they join us. Welcome, everyone. Today's event on as part of this is the first in our series of webinars on Oracle migration, and we encourage you to ask questions. There's two ways to communicate with us. We prefer if you're going to ask a question that you want us to cover at the end of the session, which should be fairly brief. Please use the Q&A button there. We will also be monitoring the chat, but Q&A will be a little bit easier for us to conduct those questions at the end of the call. So without further ado, I will get us started. As way of introductions, my name is Brian Turf. I'm a Senior Director of Product Marketing here at EDB. My background is in data. I've worked in technology for about 25 years. A good chunk of that was at IBM and worked with their data products, cloud products, and mainframe software. I've been at EDB for a little over 3 months, and I cover our ePass and Oracle migration products. Julian, I'll hand it off to you.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, Julian Moffat, nice to meet everyone. I also relatively new to EDB, started just at the turn of the year. Prior to that, I worked in financial services for many, many years, 17 years. Lots of experience in the database space, most specifically kind of setting strategy around open source databases, positioning Postgres as go-to, implementing both private and public cloud Postgres platforms, and then running programs as Oracle migration programs primarily. So hopefully lots of lessons learned along the way, and hopefully lots of things that we can share with the audience today.
So we're going to start with the poll. Nicole, if you can pull that up for us. So this is basically just to kind of level set with the audience, see what kinds of roles we have on today. We're going to give about 30 seconds. So if you can, please answer, we'll get back to the presentation. All right, if you can get those answers in. All right, Nicole, if you could show the results. All right, so database administrators is the obvious one here. We have a good number of application developers, which is great because that's kind of the focus of the event today. And then a good mix of kind of architect and other IT senior management. So great, thank you very much. Let's keep moving. Just to give a little preview of the series of webinars that we're doing today, obviously we're talking about what developers are looking for when the company's made the decision to leave Oracle. So, and we hope that you'll agree that the answer is Postgres. Next week, we'll go a deep dive on EDB's expertise and tooling around Oracle migration, and really kind of deep dive on how our tools make that journey a little bit easier. And then on the 27th, we have an event where we will talk about how other customers have gone through this process, kind of some of the pitfalls that they've had, and talk about the successes that they've had kind of during the process, and then post making the move from Oracle. You can, many of you may have registered for the whole series, but you can register for individual events. So if you haven't registered for those other events, I encourage you to do so, and we'll see you in the next couple weeks. So just a quick level set of what we're going to cover today, what developers want when leaving Oracle, why we think that Postgres, and specifically EDB Postgres, is a perfect choice for developers and really for anyone who's looking for an Oracle alternative. And then Julian will go into some of the key factors to consider before making that choice to migrate off of Oracle. So we're going to do another poll here. All right, so really just kind of looking at if you've already decided to move off, or you're considering the move, we just are looking for reasons that you're considering a move from Oracle. So if you give that, we'll give another 10 or 15 seconds for people to answer. And I am checking my watch because things move more quickly in webinar time. All right, that's about 30 seconds. So let's see the results. This is not surprising. So high cost and kind of the vendor lock-in, vendor relationship. We hear this all the time from our customers. Interestingly enough, and we'll see this in the next couple of slides, but developers, don't usually worry as much about high cost. I think we had 8 or so developers that were answered the role question before, so it's not surprising that we have about 8 people here saying that they're looking for something in a non-Oracle platform. So let's close this out, and we'll move on to the next slide. Thank you. So what are developers looking for in an Oracle alternative? Let's start by looking at the recent results from the Stack Overflow developer survey. This is really exciting for us as a company because Postgres is really emerging. You see here, so we have a few slides here, different kind of cuts at database technology. The first one is loved versus dreaded, and you see Postgres is the leader here. Redis was leader in the last couple of years, so Postgres really has a lot of positive momentum here. And if you look at all the way at the bottom there, the third from the bottom, well the very bottom one, my former product that I covered, IBM DB2, but a couple rows up is Oracle. So just a little bit of preview for what we're going to talk about today, but developers really prefer Postgres, and Oracle maybe not so much. The next cut of data is want. So this really talks about database technology that people want to be developing on but are not currently. And so this is kind of what alternatives are people looking for. And again, this is a case where MongoDB was the leader over the last couple of years, and Postgres is really that momentum showing that Postgres is something that developers want if they aren't using them on their current projects. And then one more cut here, most popular. So this is what developers are actually, technology that they're actually working with today. And I think it's within the last 12 months. And we did a professional developer cut on this just to, that cut wasn't available on the other slides, but just to really make this more relevant to what we're talking about. And again, you see Postgres is the leader here. So Postgres is it's a well-loved technology, and it's gaining momentum. That's, I think, really the thing that we see with with this specifically for developers. Developers really love Postgres, and if you're considering moving off of Oracle, that's certainly a database that you should consider, because that's you'll get a lot of support and applause from your developers. So a little bit about this. As I mentioned before, normally when we talk about the slide of what are people considering when they want to move off of Oracle, we'll cover things like cost. We'll cover kind of the vendor relationship with Oracle, not wanting to get locked in, kind of the onerous audits, et cetera. But again, the point of view of today's presentation is really from a developer point of view. So those are less important factors for them. They have other things. So many times organizations and developers are really prefer an open source first strategy. So we see this, this is emerging in government. This is emerging with a lot of private companies as well. So really that desire to do open source technology is really important for them. Developers want more choices in the cloud. So hybrid, fully managed. So we have, we'll talk a little bit later about some of our fully managed capabilities. They want more agile deployment options. So they're looking at things like cloud native. They wanted, Kubernetes, other container technologies. This is obviously, ways to be more agile, more efficient, and it also gives a lot more flexibility for application developers. The next point is around minimizing application recoding. So obviously, most developers would probably be fine staying on the platform they're on now, because it's frankly easier for them. If they are moving, they want to move to a platform that is not going to require them to recode significant portions of applications that have interactions with the database. So that's something to consider as well. And then the last point here is Postgres is the database developers grew up using. So as I mentioned, I've been here for a few months. When I was joining here, and I actually used to work for Stack Overflow, so I have really good ties with the developer community. And I talked to a lot of people who are either current or former developers, and they were really excited for me because they said, Postgres is the database that we love. It's the first database I used. I used it to learn how to code. So it's something that I think we see over and over again, that developers are really comfortable with Postgres. So next point, we're gonna talk a little bit more about Postgres. So kind of building on that last point of the last slide. Before we do that, we're gonna do our third poll. So really quickly, 2 answers. Are you currently using Postgres or EDB Postgres? Just so we get kind of a sense of current customers, people who are considering or using it today. And I'll give people about 20 more seconds to answer this. Or all right, let's see the results here. So, certainly a lot. So great to see a lot of current customers are here on the call. Hopefully the 38%, by the end of the webinar series, or certainly by the end of today, we'll convince a few more of you to make the switch. But anyway, just wanted to level set here. So let's close this out and we'll move on to the next part here. So we really obviously believe that EDB Postgres is the right destination for any organization looking to move off of Oracle. EDB is a leader in Postgres, so we are far and away the biggest contributor to the Postgres open source project. I think typically, in excess of 30% of the code contributed each year comes from EDB employees. We have over 200 software developers that develop in Postgres and are developing for Postgres. We also have the migration portal. We'll touch on that a little bit. This is really the focus of the September 20th event, but we have Migration Portal, which really helps assess and translate schemas between Oracle and EDB Postgres. We have other tools. We have migration support services. The other thing is, so a lot of, we support both people moving to the EDB Postgres as well as people moving just to a pure open source Postgres. One of the ways we support that is certainly we have migration support services that can help you get to Postgres. But we also have Postgres Community 360, which is our support program. So things like break fix, 24-hour support. So there's a lot of things that we can do, particularly if your organization is moving to Postgres and you're concerned about maybe a gap in skill set. EDB can really help bridge that gap pretty well. The last thing I want to talk about here on this slide is EDB Postgres Advanced Server, or EPAS. Oracle compatibility is a really key element of the product. So we have painstakingly added schema types, data types, and this really kind of speaks to that question before about developers, or that point before about developers wanting to minimize recoding. So we try to build as much as we can into the database server so that you're not having to recode everything. Your EDB version of Postgres will interact with those applications very well that were primarily written for Oracle. Now, nothing is 100%, so it's not that this is a magic wand and we get there, but again, it is a dramatic reduction in the amount of kind of manual work to get there. A lot of automation built into that. EPAS is enterprise-ready performance, security, scalability. We also have a high availability option. So if you want really high availability, we have EDB Postgres distributed. And then the last point, deploy anywhere. So mentioned before, cloud options. Many people who are on Oracle today are being encouraged to move to the cloud, and maybe you're not excited about moving to the Oracle cloud. This gives you a lot more flexibility. We can help you deploy on any cloud, cloud native and Kubernetes, et cetera. And then we also have a fully managed service called Big Animal. So if you just want to worry about innovation, leave the database to us. So that's kind of a database as a service offering. And again, you can contact us if you want more information about that. All right, I'm going to now hand it over to Julian to cover key factors to consider before starting on the migration journey. Julian?
Thanks, Brian. If you could just flip to the next slide, please. And apologies for the shaky handheld, everyone. I'm juggling some technical difficulties today. So I think one of the things that we've learned over time is doing these migrations. The technical migration capability is really important, and that's something, as Brian mentioned, we can help with for sure. But the non-technicals are equally, if not more important. So you've got lots of options if you're on a path of getting off Oracle in this case, or any legacy database. It's really important to spend a bit of time just up front, do some time investment in figuring out what are your target platforms, educate your application consumers on where they can go. And there's a variety of different options. I'll talk through these relatively briefly. Going from left to right, just on that picture. The first one, the easy one, to reduce your legacy estate, to take out Oracle databases, just think about application decommissioning. So if you're going through any kind of application consolidation exercise, think about what things you can turn up and free up Oracle databases. Equally so, do some housekeeping. More often than not, you'll find that there are multiple copies of database, particularly in development environments, where you don't necessarily need them all. So just turn those things off. Those are your kind of low-hanging fruits. The next column talks a little bit about particularly where organizations are going through some kind of application modernization exercise. Often you'll look at your full app stack and you may make a decision to move away from a traditional relational database completely. You may go to a big data or NoSQL. Help your application teams there, give them kind of guidance on, based on workloads, what's the appropriate platform to go to. Again, all of those things, even if it's not Postgres, which is our preferred target here, but even if it's not Postgres, it contributes to you exiting your Oracle or your legacy database. We'll come back to the Postgres, the IDBMS Postgres box in just a minute, because I want to spend a little bit more time on that. But just the two boxes on the right, don't shoehorn an application into Postgres if it's not the right fit. Nobody's going to be successful if you do that. Take a measured decision on that. Go to a different platform if you think it's the right thing to do, but try not to just force it into Postgres. And then the last one, I think we just need to talk about the elephant in the room. There are some applications, particularly on Oracle, that you will not, at least in the near or midterm, be able to remove. So think about how to minimize that. The key is minimizing that residual estate, ring fencing it. There's lots of different options on how to manage that, whether it's offloading support for third-party vendor applications directly to that vendor and including the database, or looking at commercial options to try and optimize the direct costs to your enterprise for that residual estate. We have a partnership with a company called Palisades. We can help you kind of untangle your Oracle contracts and understand what options may be valuable for you there. So something to bear in mind, just don't lose sight of it. It will come up. But the key one on this page, I think, is in your target platform. So if you're going to take out an Oracle platform as an example, the chances are it's been around for years. It's very well established. It's very mature, has a whole bunch of bells and whistles that have been developed over years. Your target platform needs to be equally as good and ideally better, which means if you're building Postgres from scratch, there's a bunch of things you need to consider. Make sure it's scalable. Think about tiered offerings for different performance profiles, for different application criticalities and different SLAs as a result. One thing I will say time and time again is introduce as much automation as you possibly can. Make sure you can automate your provisioning. That'll help you reduce your provisioning time. It also gives you repeatability in your deployments. It'll help increase your reliability. You don't get configuration drift, all of those types of things. Really, really important for anyone who's trying to operate on scale. Another key point to note is the database engine itself, the Postgres engine, is just one tiny piece of your database solution. The full solution requires, just as we touched on, the ability to provision that. You need monitoring tools. You don't want to be the people that get a call at 3 a.m. on a Sunday night from your application team to tell you your database has gone down. You need to be ahead of that. You need to be proactive in that and be able to take charge of that up front. Next thing is just think about what's the operational support you've got for your Postgres environment, the new Postgres environment you're building. Again, you can build the shiniest, most beautiful car in the world, but if you haven't got a driver, then your car is not going to get a great reputation. So think about getting the right skills in place. Go through training exercises. Again, EDB can offer help in that respect. Two last things that on your new platform that I found really, really important are education. If you're building something new, make sure your consumers understand what you've built. Give them as much information as you can on your high availability solution, your reliability stats, how people provision the environment, how developers can call IAC type APIs to go and deploy the new environment. Really, really educate people. Make a point of getting kind of combined database service provider and consumer platforms together, forums together, so that you can kind of bi-directionally exchange information and really just bring people up to speed on the good things that you've built. And last point, think about incentivizing your consumers. Migration is an effort. It doesn't always get as much priority as we would like it to against kind of business deliverables. So think about ways that you can make it appealing, not just because people want to get Postgres. We hope everyone does want to get to Postgres. We love Postgres. That's why we're trying to drive a very strong Postgres agenda. But think about costs. So undoubtedly, particularly when you're coming off Oracle, the direct cost to your enterprise will reduce by moving to an open source database. See if you can try and transfer that benefit to your consumers with a smaller or with a lower price for their database. Think about, if it's not cost, think about other things like faster time to provision. Can you make your developers productive faster? Can you deliver a database in minutes instead of days or weeks in some cases? So those are kind of key things that I think we want folks to think about before you kind of actually get into the exercise. If we could just move to the next one, please, Brian. And yeah, so you've got to the point where you know you want to get off Oracle, you know where you want to go, you know all of your different target platforms. The big question is, how do you actually get this thing started? So one of the challenges we see time and time again is just in getting buy-in to move forward. It's a commitment. There's time required, even if you take our EPAS option, where, as Brian says, we can kind of dramatically reduce the effort from a migration perspective. There is still application team effort required. There's still regression testing at a minimum required. There's going to be some performance tuning required. So you need commitment. What we've got on the right-hand side of this picture is just a bunch of different things, which I'll go through very quickly, and then we'll leave a little bit of time for Q&A. I think starting at the top, the first one, think about what is your approach in your enterprise, in your company, what's appropriate for you? Are you going to treat this as a push exercise, meaning you're going to mandate the migration away from Oracle? Or is this a pull where you build the nice new shiny platform and kind of take a build it and they will come approach? Neither is right or wrong. They have very different implications on timelines. Typically, we see customers who are running up against time constraints to get off, as an example, an Oracle contract. They take a very strong kind of mandate and a push approach. On that, next thing to consider is, do you know who your stakeholders are? Do you know who needs to be engaged and help drive this exercise? Do you have support from your seniors in technology? Do you have support from your application development seniors? Do you have support from your compute guys, from your finance guys, whoever it happens to be? Figure out who you need in your organization, who are the appropriate folks to help drive this activity, and use that, build some forums, use that forum to kind of set targets, to agree objectives and timelines. Having timelines and objectives, I find, is really, really important. Otherwise, the exercise just kind of drifts for a long period of time. On that journey, you're probably going to have to put together some business cases. You're going to have to go through the exercise of understanding, yes, this will cost me money to get there, but what is my save, and over what time do I get an ROI? As I mentioned, metrics are really, really important. Make sure you've got some way of measuring your estate, and particularly your Oracle estate or the growth of your Postgres estate. Be able to demonstrate progress. Set yourself some targets and be able to demonstrate progress against those. Really, really important, just to kind of show some momentum in the exercise. This isn't for anyone that's done this at scale or is thinking about doing this at scale. This is not something you do overnight. There's effort involved. Next one we touched on earlier: socialize the new platform. Make sure people are aware what the new platform's about, what capabilities you've got. Make sure you've got a technical migration process. We're going to talk about that, I think, in the next session, and possibly the third session that we've got. So I'm going to skip over that one for now. Incentives we mentioned about. Just again, think of ways to make it attractive for folks to get onto the new platform. And then finally, think about, in your enterprise, do you have other initiatives that you can partner with? So what you don't want to do is hit your application teams with yet another exercise. Try and join forces with application modernization, join forces with end-of-life remediation or other risk reduction exercise. Just lessen the burden and kind of bring a few things together for your app teams. So that was a kind of breakneck speed version of some of the things to consider. But yeah, we'd love to work with you guys going forward. These are all things that we can consult on from an EDB perspective. So after the call, by all means, reach out and we can see if we can try and help you further on some of this stuff. Thank you.
So I'm gonna, I'd be remiss as a marketer if I didn't do a little pitch here to a call to action. Really would encourage anybody who's considering this to try our free migration portal. It's pretty easy. You can sign up, log in. This will give you an assessment of what the migration effort might look like. It'll tell you which either data elements or portions of your schema are not going to kind of translate automatically. We just released a new version of this 4.1 a few weeks ago, and it's got a 1 to 5 scale on the kind of the difficulty of the migration based on your current Oracle schema and everything else. And then it will also do that translation to EPAS schema. So encourage you to try that. And again, come to the webinar next week and you'll get a deep dive on that. And Matthew, our product manager, will demonstrate that and kind of show you a lot more about how to use it. Just one more pitch for the rest of the series. I just mentioned this one, that next week we're going to go through some of the tools. And then on the 27th, we'll talk about some of the customer success stories and some of the obstacles people faced and how they overcame them and found success moving to Postgres. All right, Q&A. So I mentioned it at the top, and I'm going to just reiterate it here. Please click on the Q&A button in the webinar console. We can get questions there, and I'm going to open it up and see what we have. Someone's asking if we can max the size of the slides. I think it's as big as I can make it, but hopefully it was not too distracting for you. First question is, generally speaking, how much can one expect to save by migrating off Oracle to EDB? A lot of caveats on this one, Julian, but I'll let you.
Yeah, so I think that the short answer to this is all databases are not created equally, meaning the answer is it varies. We have seen upwards or up to about 80% reduction in effort from migration. So going from Oracle to EPAS, so EDB Postgres Advanced Server. And one of the reasons for that is primarily because of the Oracle compatibility layer that Brian touched on. That means you don't necessarily need to, well, you will not need to recode your PL SQL. It means that a number of the objects and functions that you use in Oracle will just work out of the box. So key one that folks rely heavily on is something like DB links, which isn't available in Postgres, but that's available in EPAS. So yeah, up to about 80% reduction in effort from compared to an Oracle to community Postgres as an example.
Another question, how does EPAS help minimize migration efforts? I know we touched on that a little bit, but maybe you can give a little bit more detail there, Julian.
Yeah, I think it was largely what I was just saying. So the same thing is it's the fact that the compatibility of their layer is there means that developers don't need to recode PL SQL. So PL SQL is one of the challenges typically where we see folks with either no or low levels of PL SQL. We often say, yeah, just go straight to community. But if you have a high degree, if you've got a very old database with lots of logic in the back end and stored procedures, that can be difficult to migrate. So that's definitely a candidate for EPAS, I would say. And it's one of the reasons where I think EPAS significantly helps that transition.
There's a couple questions here on, is there a link for the free migration portal, and also where do I register for the next 2 sessions? And Cecilia put a link in, can you put that in the chat, Cecilia, if you haven't already?
Sure, I'll put it now too. Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, so I won't read them because it's a longish URL and that would be hazardous, but yeah, so look in the chat, you can get there. I think there'll also be, we'll send a copy of the slides out to attendees, and we'll make sure that we get those links in that email as well.
Great.
Does EDB migrate application tier as well?
No, we are a database service provider, so we focus just on the database piece. We do have partners that we work with to do the app tier. So yeah, really good question. That's critical. The database is just one part of this. But yeah, we don't do that ourselves, but we have partners we can hook you up with to give you that holistic migration.
Let's see. Somebody is asking, can we migrate RAC or RAC database in Postgres?
Oh, yes, we can. So in EDB, we have a couple of high availability options, one of which is something called Postgres Distributed, which basically gives you a rack-like capability. We are the only Postgres provider that has a true multi-master replication technology at the database level for Postgres. And with that, we can give kind of 5 nines availability, always on capabilities, and all kinds of, it opens up a whole plethora of exciting options around online upgrades, etc. So short answer is yes. We can handle that.
There's a question related to that, and I don't know if you can provide maybe just a little bit more detail. Someone's asking how high availability works in Postgres as compared to Oracle RAC.
Yeah, so well, compared to RAC, that is our equivalent to that would be what I just described, which is Postgres distributed. So it's a bidirectional replication solution, which we've developed within EDB. We are, as I say, the only vendor that does that at a Postgres level. There are data solutions, so data replication solutions, but it's not managed by the database. And typically in these things, anyone who's managed this will understand you want your replication managed by the data rather than some kind of external storage replication capability. That's our high-end solution for the true kind of 5 nines always on availability. There are a number of different options within Postgres for what's more traditionally known as streaming replication. So there is open source rep manager is out there for community edition. EDB also has a capability called enterprise failover manager, which basically manages that switchover in the event of a failure from your primary read-write nodes to your standby read-only nodes. And also gives you the ability to have addressable read-only replicas, all that kind of good stuff. So yes, in short, and this is one of the things that perhaps people aren't fully aware of, over time, Postgres has developed into be a very, very enterprise strong solution. And with vendors like EDB, like us, there are solutions there for folks to be able to manage the kind of high availability that you would expect from any of the other big database vendors, including Oracle. So yeah, in short answer again, yes, we have options for 4 nines and 5 nines and beyond.
Someone is asking what other benefits other than cost. I'll take a quick stab at this, and then Julian, please fill in and round out the answer. But as I mentioned before, certainly we have support. One of the big kind of concerns of people moving off of Oracle is that particularly DBAs have tools that they use for Oracle. They have a lot of kind of career learning in that space, and so there's concerns about moving off of that. So we have tooling that can make that transition a lot easier. We have services and support that can help that. And then I think that the big benefit is just the speed to change. These projects can be very thorny and challenging, and using some of our migration services and tools can really shorten that. Not to say that they won't be still challenging, but certainly doing this on your own would be very difficult. Julian, anything else to add there?
Yeah, I would add one more thing, I think, around portability. So one of the reasons people look at open source software as a whole is to not be beholden to proprietary vendors. And we see exactly the same in the database space, particularly with Postgres. Postgres is a great database. Functionally, it's as rich, if not more rich in some cases, than many of the more traditional commercial vendors. But the beauty, and I've gone down this myself in previous life, the beauty of going to an open source database is that the technology you use is independent from the commercial construct that you've got. So I can deploy a Postgres database, and I can go into a support agreement with a company, and for whatever reason, if I don't like those commercial terms or I'm not comfortable with the level of support, I can change that without having to do a full application migration and impacting all of my app dev teams and requiring their resources to do a migration. So that's something that's really, really important. What we do in EDB is I think we take that portability to kind of the next level with our public cloud offerings. So we're also kind of hyperscaler agnostic. We have offerings, as Brian mentioned, on our big animal platform in Microsoft Azure and AWS, and we've got GCP coming very early in 2023. So yeah, portability is a big one, I think, for most folks looking at open source, and I think EDB is pretty well positioned there. So yeah, happy to try and help folks with that going forward.
I think we have time for one question. We have a few other questions that I don't think we're going to have time to get to today. We will try to answer those in the follow-up email. But I do encourage you, I think some of the questions we'll cover on the next couple of webinars as well. So I do encourage you to join those. And if we don't get to your question today, certainly, hopefully we'll answer them in those sessions, or Matt or someone else on those events can answer that. But one last question. When I started with Oracle in 1987, we had a lot of pre-compilers like Pro-C, Pro-COBOL, Pro-ADA. What do you think about this approach?
Honestly, I'm probably not best placed to answer it. I'll give you a poor answer on that one. So I think that's one we'll take away, and we'll see if we can get one of our experts to give you a proper response for that one.
Great. Well, I'm gonna close it there. I know we promised this to be a shorter event, and great questions. We really appreciate them. And as I mentioned, the best way to get more information on this is to reach out to us and attend the rest of the series. Links are in the chat box. So if you want to get those before we close out the webinar, I'd encourage you to do so now. And with that, I will say thank you to everyone. This has been a really stimulating call. I appreciate all of the questions and your attendance. And please join us on the next over the next 2 weeks for the rest of the series. Thank you.
Thank you.